Right, hello everyone. So today I'd like to talk about Animal Farm by George Orwell. That was his pen name. His actual real name was Eric Arthur Blair. And he took the name George Orwell because he was inspired by his favourite place, the River Orwell. So there you go, Orwellian. Refers to a river in, I think, Somerset or something like this. Anyway, brilliant book. Thoroughly recommend it. This speech, is this what I'm doing? Speech, this class, this video this sermon will obviously contain spoilers. I don't think it really matters. I mean, Animal Farm is just a short novella. I think we all kind of have a basic idea of what happens at the end. It's only about 100 pages long, or maybe less than that, maybe 80 or 90, I can't remember. But yeah, go and read it. It's good fun. Great book. Did enjoy it. I'm not really sure if you could call it a children's book, but a child could read it. I don't think it was designed for children. Obviously, the story behind Animal Farm was that, well, the story that I heard about Animal Farm is that it was intended to be censorship proof, in that he thought maybe he could get it published in the Soviet Union and skip under the censorship. But of course, that was the story that I heard as a child, but I don't actually think that's true, because there's a bit of a convoluted background to the Animal Farm. Because what happened is, after the book was written, Orwell died in, let's have a look, Orwell died in 1950. Okay, so he writes, of course, 1984 in 1949, and then dies about a year later. Yeah, and then the CIA apparently approached his widow, a young lady. I'm pretty sure he married a young lady, because he had a wife before, and then they adopted a child, and the wife died for whatever reason, and he married a younger woman. Apparently this was part of the inspiration for Winston Smith, I think the main character in 1984 is called, because he falls in love with the younger lady, isn't it? But anyway, the CIA apparently approached his widow and asked them to have the rights to the story so that they could make a movie about it. And that's where the animated cartoon Animal Farm comes from. And of course they changed the meaning, they changed the ending of the story and turned it into an anti-communist book, whereas the original Animal Farm technically is not actually an anti-communist book, because George Orwell was a committed democratic socialist. He just rejected Stalinism. That's what the story is actually about. But anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I heard that the book was written as a fable, as a story about animals, in order to dodge censorship. But funnily enough, first of all, the book gets censored straight away. Like he finished the book in like 1943 or something like this, but nobody would publish it, because obviously it was in the middle of the war, and Stalin was our ally, and nobody wanted to take this anti-communist stance. So nobody would publish it during the war. It ended up getting published when the war was ended. And then later on, the CIA came in and kind of took the story and manipulated it and turned it into something else. So I guess part of the myth of Animal Farm is a fight against censorship. That's part of the story, how it was written, why it was written. I mean, it was written to fight against authoritarian censorship. Essentially, it was written to fight against authoritarianism itself, Stalin, and so on and so forth. But even in England, he struggled to publish this book against it, and then the story was twisted in the end. So interesting fable. There's, in the edition that I brought, there is an included like editorial letter preface, which he wanted to put at the beginning of the book, complaining about the fact that none of the publishers in England would publish the book. And he spoke about how the government is not deliberately censoring the book, but there's a kind of groupthink in England, so that publishers just want to steer away. There are just certain things that should not be said. Oh, it's just not right. It's just not on form to be criticizing Stalin, so they refrain from publishing it, which is kind of amazing. And he makes the point that people were free to criticize Churchill. makes it kind of, it's kind of incredible what kind of censorship went on back in those days. It's just kind of incredible to look back and think about how what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and the norms, just change over the time. Orwell makes the point of saying that in Victorian times, apparently it was considered wrong to discuss the subject matter of trousers in front of a lady. Can you imagine it? Oh, what kind of a world did they live in back then? So anyway, the backstory of Animal Farm is a story of censorship. The book itself is a rebellion against authority, and the book itself struggled to get published because of authoritarianism in some form. It is a fable. A fable, if you don't know, is a book or a story about animals, right? Aesop's fables would be the best example of this, or the original example, I suppose, in Western civilization. Aesop's fables, of course, contains the story of the hare and the tortoise. We all know that one, don't we? They have a race, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Something is sparking in my mind while I'm saying this. But anyway, Aesop's fables, the tortoise and the hare, they have a race, and the hare takes a rest, and the tortoise wins, right? And what is sparking in my mind as I speak about this is just there's some kind of synergy going on here, and I don't know if this is just, quote unquote, to use the hippie term, the universe speaking to me, or if it's Amazon and the tech companies in the background listening to my phone conversations and watching like what I'm looking at on the internet, and then presenting content in front of me. But for whatever reason, it's kind of freaky actually. Whatever reason, like just as I was reading the book, I watched a movie on Netflix, a very kind of right-wing movie, and I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head. It was called, I think it was called The Hunt, but don't quote me on that. Didn't have anybody famous in it. I just watched it. It looked kind of fun. It's not a famous movie, but it came out only like a couple of years ago. I do recommend it if you want to see it, because it's fun and kind of right wing and kind of making fun of liberals. I mean, I'm scratching my head thinking, what is this movie doing on Netflix? What's going on here? This is not the kind of woke movie I expect to see on Netflix. But anyway, it's a movie about some rednecks and conspiracy theorists, right? Some deplorables who get kidnapped by a bunch of rich people, and then they wake up in the forest, and then they get hunted down and shot and murdered. And the idea is that they are conspiracy theorists. They think that the elites are hunting and killing people on something called the farm, right? And they've got this idea, and it's going all around the internet. And then there are some of these elites, they work in some big company somewhere, they're really rich, and they joke about it on some text message, and the text message gets leaked, and then there's a public backlash because they're joking about the farm. The farm's not real, right? The idea that the elites are hunting Trump supporters isn't real, but it's a conspiracy theory that's on the internet, and the elites know about it, so they're joking about it in private. The text messages get released, and they all get the sack, so then they think, fuck it, let's fucking kill these people, right? And so that's what happens. They kidnap these people, they wake up in the forest, they hunt them down, they shoot them. But one of the ladies is like a military lady, and she's really tough, and she kills them all and has a showdown with the bad boss lady at the end, and that's it. And it turns out she wasn't even the girl that they wanted to kidnap. They kidnapped the wrong girl because her name was similar to somebody else. But anyway, it's a fun movie, right? What does this got to do with Animal Farm? Well, they call her Snowdrop. And Snowdrop is one of the main characters in Animal Farm. So why did I end up watching this movie at the same time that I'm reading Animal Farm? I mean, what are the odds of that? And then just as I was telling the story of Aesop's fable, excuse me, the story of the hare and the tortoise, they tell the story in the movie. She tells the story of the hare and the tortoise. And she changes the story. Like the tortoise wins and the hare comes back and like kills the tortoise or something, whatever. Anyway, I don't know. 10 minutes in. But that's a fable. But I guess just to like segue that back into Animal Farm, that is a scary form of I don't know, paranoia and nudge authoritarianism, where we're surrounded by tech companies and they're listening to us and they're watching everything that we say, and are they pushing us in a certain direction? Did that movie pop up on Netflix because some algorithm somewhere, noticed that I was reading Animal Farm, and they knew there was an Animal Farm reference in that movie, and so they presented it to me, and I took it. Am I being led by the nose by Netflix and Amazon? It's quite scary, isn't it? It's quite terrifying. But anyway, the story's a fable. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's one of England's 3 greatest fables, right? I'm just making this characterization now, this classification now. So you've got Richard Adams's Watership Down, and you've got, I can't remember the author, but Wind in the Willows, right? I've half read Watership Down. I will finish it this year. I started to read it. I lost the book. Fell down the back of my car somewhere, and I found it like 6 months later. I was like, oh. But Watership Down is obviously the story about the rabbits, and they go on the quest for the Holy Land, and it's a very nice story. But it's a fable. It's a story about animals. So what is that? It's an anti-authoritarian, well, there you go. It's not actually an anti-communist story. Most people think it is, but it's not, because Orwell was a bit of a lefty, but he believed in democratic socialism, not Stalinism, not totalitarian, throw people in the gulag and murder them, Stalinism. He wanted, this is a whole other subject matter in itself, but I really get fed up. I have to admit to you, I really get fed up with isms and ists. Because you can go on Wikipedia, what's democratic socialism? And then you'll read the article, and it'll give you all these isms and ists and different groups of thoughts and types of thoughts. And for me, it's just so much kind of lazy, kind of flag waving, lazy thought. I really don't like it. I've talked about this many times before. I think it is a case of Hegelian conceptual thought, Hegelian dialect. And what I mean by this is that one time I saw a random philosophy video by some guy on YouTube, a professor, giving a lecture, and he was talking about Hegel. And he was, obviously Hegel is the old German philosopher who was an inspiration for Karl Marx. Marx's philosophy is dialectical materialism, okay? So the idea that historical events are happening, and there's a thesis, and then there's a antithesis, and there's a synthesis, right? This is what Hegel said. Hegel said you have a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis, and this is how ideas move forward, okay? Karl Marx took that and transposed it onto history. So the ongoing class war is just this event happens, and then this is the reaction, and then something else happens. This is like Alex Jones, what's it called? Something reaction solution. Problem reaction solution, right? You've probably seen David Icke and Alex Jones banging on about this. They blow up the World Trade Center, that's the problem, and then the reaction is invade Iraq and take away your liberties, and so on and so forth. So anyway, the point being, this philosopher said, this online philosopher that I saw, he was talking about Hegel. He said Hegel promoted something called conceptual thinking. So with conceptual thinking, what you have essentially is a cluster of ideas that are lumped together, and then you sort of think about that cluster of ideas as a concept, and then you've got another concept over there, and that's another kind of cluster or collection of ideas, and you sort of go over there. So it's not clear thinking, because what's socialism? It could be many things. It's essentially a collection of various different moral positions and policies that have all been lumped together. What's capitalism? It's the same thing, a collection of a lump of different policies and moral positions lumped together. But specifically, like, what's the core? Well, some of those positions could be... The whole thing's just like a Venn diagram, essentially. There is a massive overlap. And some positions that were considered to be left-wing become right-wing. Some positions that become right-wing become left-wing. So you spend your life talking about isms. You're just spending your life talking about lazy clouds, like, floating in the sky and merging with each other. It's not clear thought. Clear thought is like, right now we're having a discussion about assisted dying. This is the issue of the day, isn't it, in the parliament? Oh, but we're going to start killing people in this country. Apparently Canada kills 10,000 people a year. 10,000 a year. Suicided, right? So this is coming over here now. Some people are for it, some people are against it, but it's a specific issue. So you can get into the issue and the morality and the details of what's good, what's bad, and separate it from isms and ists. That's clear thinking. When you start talking about democratic socialism or libertarian socialism, or let me just give you an example, actually. Okay, so I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page now. I'll read it to you. In the broad sense, democratic socialism includes anti-authoritarian forms of social democracy, liberal socialism, utopian socialism, market socialism, reformist socialism, revolutionary socialism, state socialism, left populism, Trotskyism, and Euro-communism. Wow, fuck me. Do you know what I mean? It's like... I'm not saying these terms are completely useless. I obviously use these terms myself, capitalism, socialism, etc. You can't help but use these terms. That's the kind of age that we live in. I'm just saying, you always got to take a step back and just realise a lot of this stuff is fuddly-duddly nonsense. But anyway, point being, Orwell was a democratic socialist. He went to Spain. He fought on the side of the communists against Franco. And I'm a fan of Franco. I'm not a fan of fascism. I don't like fascism. But given the choice between Mussolini or the communists, or Franco or the communists, I'd pick Mussolini and I'd pick Franco. And as you know, my opinion on Hitler is that if Hitler had followed in the footsteps of Mussolini and Franco, as he should have done, if he'd have just decided to peacefully be the dictator of Germany, the Second World War would never have happened. It would never have happened. But he couldn't help. He invaded a bunch of countries, and there you go. The rest is history. But point being, he's a lefty. So the idea of Animal Farm is not to totally disprove communism or totally disprove socialism. The idea was to disprove Stalinism. Okay? So you got to get that clear, because the CIA took the book, they made a film out of it, and they taught a whole generation of children to read the book, and they've turned it into this anti-communist propaganda. But it's not really anti-communist propaganda at all. It's anti-Stalinist propaganda. You see. So anyway, what happens in the story is that there's a farm, and there's an old pig on the farm. The farm is ruled, owned by Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is old. He's a bit of an alcoholic. He's not really doing his job properly. I'm not sure why he's an alcoholic. I can't remember. But he's not a happy bunny. He's not a good farmer. He's not organised. I don't think he's especially cruel or anything. But he likes to drink, right? He's not doing so well. He's a bit down on his luck. And there's an old pig in the farm, which is known as the Major. He's about 12 or 13 years old. And he's going to die soon. He knows it. And one day he summons all the animals into the barn to give a speech, right? And he's respected. And he gives he tells this story about how he had a dream. Okay, he had a dream. And in the dream, because it's kind of beautiful to me, actually, that there's this like mystical beginning to the book, which is totally lost in the cartoon. By the way, I don't recommend, if you do want to watch the cartoon, you can watch it for free on YouTube. But I found the first video that popped up for me was 2 hours long. It was really long, it was really slow, it was really boring. And at the 2-hour mark, it's only like halfway through the movie, so I have no idea what's going on there. But the original movie is 1 hour and 13 minutes, and there is a version like that on YouTube, so find that version and watch it if you want to. I don't really recommend it. It's not, well, you know, if you're bored, you can. It's not great. It's not a great cartoon, but whatever. But do watch the. I have no idea what's going on with the 2-hour long one. Was it an unedited older version of Animal Farm that didn't get released, and then I've got no idea. But anyway, I love the mythical beginning to the story. Right, I love it. I just love the fact that socialism and any kind of utopian idea is a dream. Right, the word utopia itself obviously comes from Thomas More's book, written Thomas More, the famous Thomas More. Right, stood up to Henry VIII. Before he divorced his wife, got executed for it. But he was a humanist, and he wrote a book called Utopia. Right? We invented everything, guys. In case you didn't know, here in England, we invented Utopia. We invented the dictatorship. Cromwell, England's first dictator, in a long, long time. Right? A long time. The concept of the dictator obviously comes from the Romans and the Roman Republic. Cromwell was the first in the modern age to use that term, as far as I remember. But anyway, whatever. We invented the idea of utopia. But the utopia, if you read Thomas More's book, and I'm going to have to do a video on that at some point this year or next year. But if you read it, the word itself is like a nowhere. It doesn't really exist. It's something. And if the book itself is described like, there's a sailor, right, who was on a boat, and he heard a story that somebody else said it's Chinese whispers. You know, somebody somewhere heard a story about this wonderful place which is out there somewhere, but nobody's quite sure where it is. And the word utopia itself in Latin kind of means a nowhere land. So this is the way these stories go, right? This is the promised land, guys. It doesn't exist. It's not real. And there's one character in the book, one very endearing character in the book, which is the donkey. I think his name's Benjamin. Don't quote me on any of these names because I've probably got to get them all wrong. But he sees through this right from the beginning. The old donkey knows. He knows this is bullshit. And somewhere along the course of the book, he basically states that things have always been rubbish and they always will be rubbish, and that's just the way it is, right? That's the very cynical approach for things. But that is the reality of this world. This world is a place of suffering, always has been, always will be. That's why people turn to God and they turn to religion and they wish to transcend. Of course, Orwell could not understand that because he was an atheist. He was an atheist, you know. So it is interesting to me that some of our most right-wing characters in English history, some of our most right-wing thinkers are basically reformed lefties. Okay, we've got the original, who would be Edmund Burke, Reflections on the Revolution of France. That caused a huge stir, right? He's the origin of conservative thought. Brilliant book. Loved it. Massively influential. Then you've got George Orwell. You've got Peter Hitchens. Peter Hitchens was a Trotskyist. Of course, Peter Hitchens turned back to God. Orwell didn't. But this is the theme, guys. This is the thing. I've been having a conversation with somebody recently. He's an older guy, 50, gentle-hearted, gentle soul. He's like, why can you be so mean to the refugees and stuff? And I'm talking to him and trying to explain immigration. And he's like slowly starting to realize, yeah, I think the immigration's a little bit too high. And it's like, yeah, I'm fucking really, yeah, mate, it's a little bit too high, isn't it? And I just, but he's a gentle soul, doesn't want to hurt anybody. But he's starting to realize that, maybe those Brexit guys have got a point. Maybe Trump's got a point, And I just had to say to him, look, this is a path this is a well-trodden path. Okay, you're young, you're stupid, you're idealistic, and you believe in utopia. And then you grow up and you realize, oh, actually the world is full of shit people, and utopia does not exist, and you just kind of have to struggle through and do the best you can. And if you try to create paradise, if you strive for paradise, then the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's what happens in Animal Farm. Everything just gets all messed up. So anyway, the Major, he knows he's going to die. He's old, he's a fat pig, he's a bore, right? He invites all the animals into the barn in the middle of the night. Mr. Jones is asleep, he's had too much to drink, and he says, I had a dream, I had a vision. And he tells a dream of a world free from human control, where animals, they own the land and they live in harmony with each other, and no animals are killed, and there's no money, and everything's shared, and it's the land of milk and honey, right? And interestingly, he says that in this dream he remembered the words to a song called what's it called? Beasts of England. And the song, I'm not going to sing it to you because that would just be awful. Do you want me to sing it to you? What should I do? Should I sing it? I'll sing you one verse if I can find it. Here we go. Beasts of England. Here we go. Sorry, it's a bit dark. Beasts of England, beasts of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken to my joyful tidings of the golden future time. Soon or late the day is coming, tyrant man shall be overthrown, and the fruitful fields of England shall be trod by beasts alone. Rings shall vanish from our noses, and the harness from our back. Bit and spur shall rust forever, cruel whips no more shall crack. Riches more than mine can picture, wheat and barley, oats and hay, clover, beans, and mangel wurzels shall be ours upon that day. Bright will shine the fields of England, purer shall its waters be, sweeter yet shall blow its breezes, on the day that sets us free. For that day we all must labour, though we die before it break. Cows and horses, geese and turkeys, all must toil for freedom's sake. Beasts of England, beasts of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken well and spread my tidings of the golden future time. So there you go. I did read it to you. I didn't sing it though. But he sings the song, right? It's not in the cartoon. I don't know why they didn't have it in the cartoon. That's one reason why I thought the cartoon was crap, because the song plays a central part in the book, in that they sing the song, it inspires the revolution, and then later on in the book, in the story, the song is banned, right? And that's essentially the essence of this story. They have this revolution, they have the song, they have the idea, animalism, they have like the 7 commandments of animalism, they're written on a wall, and then gradually, one by one, the pigs that take over Animal Farm break all the rules, and they change the constitution until the pigs become the humans, right? And everything remains the same, but just kind of worse than it was before, basically. So yeah, that's the essence of the story. But so all the animals, they sing this song and they love it, and they're all inspired for revolution. And there's as I say, the donkey is not convinced. There's also a raven, interestingly enough, who represents religion, and the raven has a different idea. The raven has a story of Sugarcane Mountain. I think it's called Sugarcane Mountain. Anyways, the land of milk and honey, right? Which is somewhere where you go, where you die, and in that land everything's pure and lovely and perfect and nice. And he tells this story, and basically they just tell the raven to shut up. They don't want to listen, right? But he represents religion. He comes back later on in the book when the animals are miserable and they're living under the tyranny of the pigs. So he disappears for a while and then comes back, and the pigs allow him to come back and to continue to spread his religious lies, his evil religious lies, right? Because again, Orwell is an atheist. He doesn't believe in this. But it is interesting that I mean, you could take a cynical view. We know what Marx said: religion is the opium of the masses. Religion is an instrument of control and domination. Religion is a carrot to balance out the stick, but it's a carrot that you never get to eat, right? So this is the Marxist view of religion. It's a lie which has been spread and used by authoritarian leaders to keep people in line. Okay, oh, you will suffer in this world, but in the next world everything will be fine. And obviously, I believe in God. I believe in life after death. I believe in heaven and hell. I believe in transcendence. But at the same time, religion can be abused, especially in the Abrahamic faiths, but also in other faiths. It obviously can be abused. So that's true. And it's I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go on a huge tangent about Christianity, but I'm not anti-Christian at all. But I do think there is some truth in the idea that the Jews created Christianity to tear down the Roman Empire. This was debated, right? The great book on this subject matter, which I still haven't read. I have to get around to it. It's 1,000 pages long, though, and I'm a bit like. But anyway, the book is City of God, City of Men. They made a movie about this called City of God, not related to the book at all. But anyway, great Brazilian movie. Go and watch it if you want. But that was published around about 500 AD or whatever, after the fall of the Roman Empire, because everyone was complaining. Like, what the hell happened? We had the empire, we converted to Christianity, and now the empire's collapsed. Like, what the hell? And this was the Christian response, right? But it was an accusation that was thrown around at the time. People blamed Christianity for the collapse of the empire, and I think there's some truth in it. Because you look at early accounts of Christianity, they had circumcision. Okay, circumcision was enforced. This is one of the questions that they were asking, because it was difficult to get people to join the religion, because they didn't want to be circumcised, and so they had to get rid of that quite early on. But all of these accounts by the pagan authors of the time of just like barbaric behavior and cannibalism and all kinds of psychopathic nonsense going on in Christian groups, you kind of scratch your head and you think, well, I don't know. I mean, if they were Jewish and essentially they were just converting to Judaism, or a new version or branch of Judaism, then you know what I mean? You've got to scratch your head about maybe the pagans had a point, right? Maybe you can blame the Antonine plague on Christians. Maybe you can. I don't know. But nonetheless, Constantine the Great did force Europe down into serfdom. This is a point I've been making for some time. So before, men were free to a certain extent. Constantine the Great, obviously the Roman emperor who converted to Christianity, he created rules. He created the laws so that the slaves or the serfs or the landowners would be tied to a manor. He created manorialism, right? The manor house became the center of power within the country, and the people ended up tied to the land, and they became serfs. Not quite a slave, but you can't leave the land and you belong to your lord, right? You're tied to it. So Constantine created that. He pushed European people into slavery, essentially. He pushed us into serfdom. And one of the great stories of the European people is that for the last 1,700 years, we've been struggling out of that serfdom. Okay, you can see it very clearly in England, because we didn't have it so bad in this country under Saxon rule. But then, of course, William the Bastard came along, brought the Jews with him, introduced tax slavery and European-style serfdom to England, and just crushed us under the hammer of this tyranny. And the story of England, the story of the Magna Carta, the quest for liberty, all of this is the quest against, the struggle against Christian serfdom and oppression. Orwell would have known this. So I do believe in God, but it can be used as a weapon against the people. So this, in the story, the raven represents this aspect of things. So anyway, the major, gets he dies, and then the pigs, they get together. Okay, 3 pigs in particular: Snowdrop, Napoleon, and Squealer. Snowdrop and Napoleon are boars, so they're bigger, and I don't really understand pig culture, but Squealer's a smaller pig, a porker. I don't know how it works, but anyway, they get together and they talk a lot because the pigs are quite clever, apparently, in the book. I mean, this is an interesting thing. There is a racial dimension to this book, which is, it's if you're going to write any kind of fable or any kind of political book, how can it not be racial? It's going to end up being racial, isn't it? I do feel like I would like to watch that Disney movie that came out recently, Zootropolis, something like this, talking about diversity and inclusion in some anthropomorphic urban environment. That'd be kind of funny to watch. But anyway, the pigs are cleverer, right? So they get together and they forge the philosophy of animalism, right? And they figure out all the ideas, how it's going to work. They convince everybody. And then one day, because Jones isn't really looking after his farm properly, the animals don't get fed and they're hungry and they have an uprising and they just turn on Jones and kick him out. And they establish Animal Farm. And it's said that, Mr. Jones's house should just be kept as a museum. And they establish the rules of Animal Farm. And I'll tell you what those rules are right now. The 7 commandments. Whoever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. So mankind is the enemy. Okay. Whoever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. No animal shall wear clothes. No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. No animal shall kill any other animal. All animals are equal. So they write this on the wall somewhere. They start teaching the other animals how to read, but most of them can't read because they're a bit stupid. And this is one of the strong themes in the book. Like the proles, the peasants, the working classes, they're too dumb and they just go along with it. I mean, the best example of this is the sheep. They've got a little chant which they say throughout the book, which is I can't find 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Basically, I think that was it. I'm paraphrasing because I can't find it. I can't be bothered to find it. But anyway, the sheep, right? They just because they're dumb, they're sheep, right? So they just go meh, 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 and they chant this. It's their favorite low IQ chant, and they just go meh, 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 and then like that's it. That they just go along with it, right? The horse boxer, who represents like the real strength and working class spirits of the people to just like work and build things and make things happen. He basically says, just work harder. I will work harder. That's his motto. I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right? Napoleon ends up being the dictator of the pigs. And by the power of these mantras, they kind of like control things. I mean, it's just interesting. I mean, it's 2 things at the same time going on here. It's just good writing, because you have a phrase and you repeat it throughout the book, and then it gets more powerful every time you hear it. Okay, I saw this in Game of Thrones. If you read Game of Thrones, everybody knows the phrase "winter is coming." A Lannister always pays his debts. That's the other one. There are a few more if you read the books. I've forgotten them now, but just about everybody knows winter is coming, don't they? That's the power of that phrase. It just made that world more real, because they had common sayings in that mythological world that have now come over into our world. So in a similar way, like they have these sayings in the book, which makes the world more real, but it also represents the way mind control works, right? You have a phrase and you repeat it over and over again, and people just go along with it. When the animals complain about various different injustices, the squealer who becomes a representative of the pigs. Great name, by the way, Squealer. I'm going to call James O'Brien Squealer from that one. Basically, the BBC is the Squealer BBC. Oh, it's just so good, isn't it? It's such a good name. I mean, by the way, just as a tangent, don't let me forget my train of thought, but just as a tangent, the question is in my mind, is Animal Farm the origin of calling the police pigs? I don't know. For some time, I thought it was Pink Floyd's The Wall. Because if you watch the movie, obviously they got all the teachers and what have you. It's been a while since I watched the movie, but the authority figures are pigs, right? And obviously now we call the police force pigs, you know. Did the guys that did Pink Floyd, that did The Wall, did they get it from George Orwell's Animal Farm? Well, I assume so. I don't know if that's true, but that's just an interesting concept. I like to see where ideas come from. I mean, just to go on another tangent, I'm thinking I may have to sit down and read William Blake again, because there's been this whole falafel with Lord of the Rings or the Rings of Power, and they've turned the orcs into friendly orcs, like the orcs with their children, and the poor orc, he doesn't want to go to war, and so there's an orc question now, right? Obviously Tolkien invented the orcs, but did he get the idea from William Blake? I've never seen anybody point this out, but if you read William Blake's poetry, he talks about orcs, and the orcs are a revolutionary force that come from the ground. I've never heard anybody put two and two together and say that's where Tolkien got it from. But obviously Tolkien would have known about William Blake. So it must come from there. Otherwise, where else does it come from? From where do the orcs come? Where is their origin? So orcs come from William Blake. Pigs come from Animal Farm. But anyway, the point being, Squealer has a saying. And the saying is, you don't want Mr. Jones to come back, do you? And everybody agrees, right? Everybody agrees that they don't want Mr. Jones back because that was awful, right? No matter how bad things get, they don't want to go back to the way things were before, because at least now they're free, right? Even though they're living under the tyranny of the pigs. But they forget how things used to be. That's another strong theme throughout the book. They just forget. But there was a point I wanted to make, about the song. We really do desperately need a song. Like, if you want any kind of revolutionary political movement, you need a song. The communists have got it with the Internationale, and obviously you have various different national anthems. But you have to have a song that people get together and they sing. Okay? Football teams have songs. Okay? It's just a fact. And we lack this. So there you go. That's something that needs to be fixed. If I was going to go back and talk to the founding fathers of America, I would tell them to make a constitutional song. And it could be a long song. It could be a long that's like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to sing. But you put the ideas of the Constitution in there. You know, we shall have the right to bear arms, la 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 la, or whatever, right? And you sing that, and the philosophical ideas are in the song, and then every generation will sing it, and that's how you get it. That's how you really capture people and make them follow. And I know this because this is how the church worked, right? Hitchens has talked about this at length. There was a time in this country where everybody knew the church songs. They were singing the same songs that their father and their grandfather and their great-grandfather and their great-great-grandfather used to sing. And it was very much embedded in the mind of the people and formed public opinion. And I also know this from living in India and singing Sanskrit songs and Bengali songs. And I've seen how that religion of Vaishnavism survives because they sing the songs. Because songs, they don't die. Songs live forever. Songs will constantly come back to life. Because people like to sing. And when you sing, you put your emotion into it. It's different to reading. Singing's like I've said for a long time that books are the essence of culture. And I think that's very true. But to sing a song that's written in a book, this is like taking an old book and bringing it back to life again, right? This is how you bring things back to life. You look at the Kalevala, the epic, excuse me, the epic of Finland. That, as far as I understand it, is a song. I may be wrong about that, but I think that you can see it on YouTube. You can sing it, you know. So, yeah. Anyway, so the pigs, they get together, they create their philosophy of animalism, they overthrow Mr. Jones, they write the ideas on the wall, everyone celebrates, everyone's happy, and then all the animals run off to do harvesting, and there's some milk left over, and they say, what should we do with the milk? And Napoleon, in the beginning there's a power struggle between the two boars, Napoleon and Snowball. He says, you go off with Snowball and do whatever, and do the harvest, I'll look after the milk, don't worry about that. And the animals come back and the milk's gone, and that's like you know something's gonna go wrong now, right? And then later on it turns out the pigs are eating the milk, but they said they need the milk. They don't really like milk, but they drink it because they got to keep, you know, their brains sharp. And the animals go along with it, and that's it basically. That's the end of Animal Farm right there. And essentially the story just follows that pattern. First of all, in the beginning there's a struggle, as I say, between Napoleon and Snowdrop. I wish that he'd picked a different name and hadn't called the chief pig, the Stalin pig, Napoleon, because then he could have more. He would have had more cultural impact if he'd given him a different name, right? Because then people could say, "Oh, you're a." Because if you can't say to someone, "Oh, you're a Napoleon," as a reference to Animal Farm, because Napoleon's Napoleon, right? You can't outshine the man himself. So I think that's one of Orwell's great mistakes in the book. Squealer, great name. Snowdrop, okay, you know. But if he'd have given that pig a different kind of name, then I think the Animal Farm would have been much more effective. I mean, it is a very effective book, but it's just a little mistake, you know, that he made. But anyway, there's a power struggle. Obviously, Napoleon is Stalin, Snowdrop is Trotsky, and the boar at the beginning, the major, is Marx and Lenin sort of combined. And there's a power struggle. No, first of all, yeah, they're always arguing with each other, and then the humans, they come in, they try to invade Animal Farm. The animals, they fight, they manage to defeat the humans, they kick them out, and then, you know, Snowdrop is declared a hero and that. And then Snowdrop's got this idea. He wants to build a windmill, and we're going to generate electricity, and we're going to have warm water and all this stuff. And he's got all these plans and ideas. And, you know, Napoleon's not really going along with it, but he's like, yeah, whatever. But then somehow or other, he manages to bump off Snowdrop, and he has to do a runner, right? And then Napoleon, like, he raises some puppies, gets some little baby puppies, he raises them, and then they become like the guard dogs, and then they're brutalizing everybody. And then Napoleon's living in the house, he's having lots of children, you hardly ever see him. Squealer comes out to give instructions to everybody, and one by one they break all the rules, right? So they start living, they start sleeping on the beds. And they change the rules, like, oh, it's not really sleeping on a bed if you're not using the bed sheets or whatever. They drink the alcohol. That's one of the 7 rules you shouldn't break. But it's like, oh, don't drink alcohol in excess. You know, they just change the rules one by one. Do not murder another animal. He gets the dogs to, like, slaughter various different animals that had rebelled against him. Snowdrop becomes the rebellious figure that's blamed for everything. Obviously, this is what Stalin did. Whenever anything went wrong, he blamed it on what was the word he used? I forget. Saboteurs or whatever. I forget the word he used. So Snowdrop gets the blame for everything, even though nobody even knows where he is. He's just gone off to another farm. Napoleon ends up trading with the farmers on either side of him, doing a deal. There's a lot of hard work put into building this windmill, and then it gets knocked down, and then they try and build it again, and then the horse, the powerful shy horse. Eventually he dies, and he gets sent off to the slaughterhouse. It's quite sad actually. It's quite a horrific book. You do feel like an emotional connection with the animals, for sure, definitely. The dumb horse sent off to the. He lies. He says, "Oh, we're going to send him off to a doctor and give him some good medicine," but they don't. They send him off to the slaughterhouse, and they get paid for it, and with the money they buy some whiskey and they drink it, and step by step, everything goes wrong. And Animal Farm just becomes this tyrannical, horrible place. But it's an efficient, tyrannical, horrible place, in a way. Or at least it's good for the pigs and it's good for the dogs. Right? The dogs obviously represent the Secret Service, whatever, the army. The KGB, the Stasi, right? And the animals forget. They forget what life was like before the revolution. They forget what it was like to live under Mr. Jones. And they forget the rules. And as I say, these rules are written on the wall, but Squealer comes out in the middle of the night and he'll add things to the rules and he'll change the rules, And then the animals, there's a repeated scene throughout the book where the animals, they go and they look, because they can't really read, you see. They try to teach some of the animals to read, but they can't really get it. And they go and they look and they're like, oh, what? I thought this rule was this. And then Squealer comes out and says, oh, no, you've got it all wrong. You've got it all backwards and blah, 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 And this goes on for many years. And new animals come into the farm. They buy new animals. They don't remember. New animals are born, and they don't remember what it was like before. And essentially, the pigs win, right? And then right at the end of the book, all of the rules get scrubbed out. First of all, they train the sheep. So the sheep, instead of singing 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, they sing 4 legs good, 2 legs better, right? And then the pigs end up walking around the farm on their hind legs, right? And now they're dressed like humans, and they're holding whips, and obviously they're sleeping in Mr. Jones's house, and drinking alcohol, and they're using money. Money was forbidden at the beginning of Animal Farm, but along the way, money comes back, and then all of the rules, all of the 7 laws. First of all, the song "Beast of England" gets deleted, that gets erased, but all of the rules. And this is such a great little line here. But all the rules get broken, the 7 commandments, and one day they just rub them all out and they write something else, and it says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. It's a classic. I'm sure we've all heard that before at some point. And and then the raven comes back. Okay, starts singing songs about Sugarcane Mountain, and the animals start dreaming about Sugarcane Mountain again, and they forget all about the utopia, and they just accept their fate, basically. And then one night, one of the farmers from the nearby farms, he comes over, and he's sitting there drinking and eating with the pigs, and he says, oh, us farmers, we were worried that you pigs were going to start a revolution, and all because they did send out doves. They sent out messengers to all the other farms in England for a revolution, and the farmers were a little bit worried. But then he says, "Oh, actually, you guys are just like us, right?" And all the pigs and the humans are laughing together. It's wild, dude. It's wild. It's such a vicious book. It's really quite incredible. And then they're looking through the window. I can't remember which character it is, or maybe it's the donkey, I forget, but they're looking through the window and they see the pig's face transform into the human's face, right? So the pigs become the humans. That's the end result. They become the new masters, everything remains the same, and that's it. That's Animal Farm. It's quite a tragic story. As I say, in the cartoon, there's a revolution, there's a secondary revolution, and the animals overthrow the evil Stalinist pigs. In this book, the pigs win. It's dark. Orwell's dark, I gotta say. Like this book and 1984, dark. There's no victory, there's no light at the end of the tunnel in either of these stories. You know, imagine a boot stamping on a human face for the rest of time. That's essentially the conclusion of 1984, right? In the end, Winston Smith gets brainwashed. He gives up his love, because 1984 is all about an older man falling in love with a younger woman, and he's not allowed to get his hands on her because of state-enforced sexual repression. But his biology overcomes that. He falls in love with her, and then they rebel against the system, and in the end they get him in there, and they torture him a little bit, but they also just brainwash him. He gives up his love for her, and in the end he loves Big Brother. He genuinely does. He learns to he learns that 4 + 4 = 5, and he learns to love Big Brother, and that's it. I think they shoot him in the end, don't they? I forget what happens. In my imagination, I remember them putting a bullet in the back of his head. But grim. Would you call it a tragedy? Like, if you can divide up all stories as it being either a tragedy or a comedy, well, I'd call it a tragedy. A dystopian black hole with no release. But anyway, there you go, guys. 56 minutes. Animal Farm. Horrific story. One point I wanted to make was that they raised the flag and they have a green flag. Is this the origin of the Green Party? Animalism. Because many different angles you could take on this book. One angle could be it's a misanthropic story, right? It's an anti-human story. Humans are bad. They don't really take the environmental angle on it. They're not saying that Mr. Jones is destroying the environment with his farm, but you could put that angle on it, couldn't you? Right? You could write another Animal Farm. You could call it, I don't know, Beasts of the Wild, right? And you could have like Mother Earth, the goddess, and she tells the beasts of the world to rise up and kill all the humans or something like that. And you could tell the story of how there's a war between animals and humans, and then the humans are torn down, and then we return back to a state of nature, and everything's happy and utopian and whatever. I mean, that could be a story you could take, you could write. But interesting that they raised the green flag, right? The green flag, the flag of the Green Party. I don't even know if the Green Party existed at that time, but I do find it very amusing. Animalism is the communist ideology of the Green Party, because they are anti-human. Right, the whole carbon footprint, global warming nonsense. It's anti-human. They want to deindustrialize. They want us to go back to living in caves, basically. They're extreme Luddites. Zealous and fanatical and radical Luddites. So there's that angle to it. There's not really any kind of sexual angle, apart from the fact of, obviously, Napoleon has got like 500 million children with all of his wives, but there's none of the weird, gay sex that's associated with the communism. There's not really any anti-revolutionary fever or movement within any of the animals. But there you go. I mean, like any story, you can't nail everything. You can't get every point correct, or you can't put everything in there. But nonetheless, it is a good satire, I suppose. I read somebody called it a Swiftian satire of the Soviet Union. I guess you could say that. Reference, of course, to Gulliver's Travels, a book which I also read this year, and I've been meaning to have a conversation about it, because I got a friend who's read it. I've got to invite him on the show, and we've got to do it at some point. I really did not enjoy that book at all, by the way. Gulliver's Travels, not a fun book. I don't know, I just found it to be grating, just difficult to read. I hated it that much. I've struggled to understand why it was so popular. Just did not find it funny in any way at all. But Animal Farm, great book. Great book, great porn show. I've never seen the porn film, actually. So there you go. But it's infamous. It is kind of funny that in this age, I mean, I guess it's another slant, isn't it, on the authoritarian theme. If you do speak to ordinary people and you talk to them about Animal Farm, a lot of the time, the first thing that pops up in their head is the infamous porn film Animal Farm, where you've got bestiality, you've got, porn actresses getting rooted by horses and so on and so forth. God almighty, like how horrific. Why would anybody want to watch that? I don't know. I guess out of a morbid curiosity. But that's a function. That's tyranny. That's not described in this Animal Farm at all. I guess because the Soviet Union was kind of different back then. But in the world that we live in, it is very much social control through pornography, essentially. Social control through OnlyFans and Tinder and Pornhub, and castrating the men, feminizing the men, because the men, they're not getting married, they're not having children, they're just masturbating, right? It's a different kind of social control. E. Michael Jones has talked about this famously. He said that when the Israelis invaded Lebanon, they took over the TV stations and they just played hardcore porn 24 hours a day just to keep people down, right? Just to stop the men from fighting back. That's the kind of world that we live in now. So anyway, many different ways for people to be repressed. At the end of the day, the world is what it is. You got to muddle through. Don't fall for utopian dreams. The grass is not always greener on the other side. And it was a really fun book, really fun, influential book, and I very much enjoyed it. All right, God bless. Thank you for listening.